Guys, before we get into talking about stinky shoes and drying them out and making everything smell good and dry, please subscribe to our channel. You can do so by clicking that little blue button right over there that says Gearist on it. A little subscribe thing should pop up. Thank you so much for doing that. And now, let's talk about DryGuy. What's up guys, Brandon here from Gearist, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Force Dry from DryGuy. There's so many ways where our gear can break down. It can be torn, it can be stepped on depending on what it is, it can be ripped, it can be just worn down after time. But one of the things that we overlook the most, I feel like, until it is absolutely thrown in our face, is the steady but persistent march of water and moisture as it comes to break down our products. Not only does water itself break things down, but it also brings along with it bacteria and mold, which apart from breaking down the structure of a fabric or adhesives or what have you, can also bring with it smell and taste and so on and so forth. It's just gross. But today, the thing that we're looking at right here, the DryGuy Force Dry, is a piece of gear that, while related to the outdoors, will probably never leave your house. However, for me, I can tell you, I don't know why it's taking me so long to get one of these, but this is something that I will always have around from here on out. Now, the Force Dry from DryGuy, try saying that 5 times fast, comes in at 8.5 inches by 10 inches by 4 inches high. It's made primarily from plastic on its outside. Of course, there's some metal inside, but it comes in a 3.25 pound package. On its base, the Force Dry rests on these 4 felt padded feet, if you will. These are meant to reduce vibration and sound, although as I'll talk about in a second, neither one would really be a problem even if they weren't there. On the top of the base right here, we find the timer knob, which goes from off all the way up to 180 minutes. So that's 3 hours of possible drying time. Attached to the underside of the base, which we can see right here, is a standard plug, which operates in a 120 volt standard AC outlet in your house. Now above the timer and on each side, we see these right here. These are 10-inch telescoping arms, which go from flat down to this way. So if this is sitting on the floor, they go straight up, and they can even go straight up for this, and I will tell you why it does that in just a minute. Now, the telescoping part of this means that these guys can extend up an additional 2.5 inches to be 12.5 inches tall, fully extended for some taller boots and things like that. At the top of each arm, we've got these slotted things right here. This is where the air actually rushes out and into whatever product you're drying. Or warmed, because this isn't just a dryer, something I'll touch on in a second. One of my favorite parts about the Force Dry from DryGuy is the fact that it's about the same size as a pair of shoes. So if you've got like a hallway or mudroom or what have you where you might keep your shoes, all you've got to do is set this on the floor right in line with the rest of your shoes, and as you can see here, it's right about the same size, so you're not taking up additional room with it. As far as durability goes, it seems well built, to be honest with you. There's no breakdown, nothing's broken or anything like that, and I imagine that if there were a failure in product, the DryGuy would back it up. Now, it's obviously not something that needs to be super durable unless you're slamming it around for some unknown reason, but otherwise it stands up really well and does its job exactly as it should. Now, before I get into talking about the actual performance of the Force Dry from DryGuy, I will tell you that in the past, my impression of drying things like this has been kind of like, it seems like a waste of money or something like that. Why not just shove some newspaper in it or use some sneaker balls or whatever? You can even put rice bags and pantyhose and things like that inside your shoes or your gloves or whatever. It will dry it out just fine. But that was until I got my hands on this, realized how much faster it is, how much more efficient it is. The first thing I should say about the performance is that the DryGuy Force Dry is quiet, like really quiet. Now, the first time that I used this, it was after a particularly rainy day on my road bike, and I was out there and my shoes were just soaked through and in desperate need of being dried, so I busted out the Force Dry. I put it down. It was about 6 feet from my head when I was watching some TV. And while I was doing that, I had no idea that it was on. In fact, when I got up and was done watching TV, I didn't even remember that it was on at all until I turned off everything in my living room, and all of a sudden I hear this really faint whirring. But it just keeps it really subtle and not annoying. So right about now, I'm pretty sure you guys are going, well, so can we hear it? Yes, you can. So here's what you do. Fold these guys up. This is how they were with my cycling shoes. And we'll just turn it on real quick. That's it. Now there's a microphone right here, so I can hold this up. That's pretty much all you're gonna hear. So if it's sitting like a number of feet away, you just really don't hear anything. I mean, it sounds like your refrigerator or something like that. I don't know. It's just really impressively quiet. Now, the other thing about the DryGuy Force Dry is that it's super simple to set up. Straight out of the box, it took me like, I don't know, 10 seconds to set it up. And it probably would have been shorter than that if I didn't have to take it out of some of the packaging, the plastic bag that it came in. But basically, you take it out, you plug it in, you go flip, flip, and you're ready to go. Now, then all you've got to do is take whatever shoe or glove or boot you've got, stick it on there. Now, while I've been talking, what's that been? 15 seconds? Somebody let me know down in the comments. And it's just ready to go. Also, bonus points if you can tell me what shoe this is right here. Now, I've used the Force Dry from DryGuy with running shoes, hiking boots, some winter gloves, some lighter weight gloves, and some cycling shoes. Now, since running shoes tend to be mostly mesh-based like these guys right here, they're gonna dry out much, much faster. Most of the running shoes that I use with this dried out roughly in about an hour or so. Now, the cycling shoes, which I found myself most using with this, actually have quite a bit of leather on them, so they're much more thick. There's no way that the air can flow through. And this is only up mainly in the collar area of those shoes. So the foam backing on it, that's going to get nice and dried out. But to be able to go all the way through, since the air can't flow through it quite as well as it could in an open mesh product like this, it's not going to be able to dry out quite as well. Or I should say quite as quickly. So while the front 2/3 of those particular cycling shoes dried out plenty fast, the back third of the shoe took a little bit longer to dry. Now, one of my concerns with the Force Dry from DryGuy was certainly that warm air going into gear. Warm air like that can break down the adhesives, it can break down the fabric or what have you if it's overly hot. Now, this will blow out a maximum temperature of 105 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just barely over normal body temperature. So thus far, I've seen absolutely no issues, whether that's on more delicate things like cycling gloves or whether it's on things like your running shoes, which you really, really don't want to mess up because you just dropped way too much money on them. The second thing that I was worried about with this was the fact that when you're drying, just air being blown right onto one spot can oftentimes break down materials even further. With this guy, because of the rounded shape of those vents on the top that we can see right here, and because they come out in all sides, you've basically got this kind of continually moving, almost convection sort of air. Now, to me, what seems to have affected dry times most, where like a larger boot or something like that is certainly going to take every bit of 3 hours, and the backside of those cycling shoes as well is going to take all 180 minutes, plus maybe even a little bit more to get it 1000% dry. What seems to affect the drying time more than anything isn't necessarily the weight of the product, but it's the ability of air to flow through it and not just through it to a point and then butting up against something like the leather that I mentioned on those cycling shoes. Now, additionally, I mentioned a second ago that this guy can act as a warmer. So this is great if you live in a colder climate. I live here in the lovely state of Colorado, and in the wintertime, believe me, there are times when it will get to a solid 20 below if you're lucky. And at those times, I really hope and pray that this is going to be so great. I haven't used it in really winter circumstances like that yet, but since this will be part of my arsenal this coming up winter, definitely keep an eye out for those Gearist dailies where we do talk about using this before I go out into the cold. So one more thing about the performance and setup is you may be wondering why these would tip all the way up like that. What is the point of that? Well, if you've got a heavier product and it won't stay standing up, let's take, for instance, I'll grab one of Baby Gearist's ski boots right here. I would grab one of mine, but those are out in the garage. I'm not going to go get them. So we'll just use one of hers. This probably won't stand up and would probably knock the DryGuy over, but what you can do is if, let's picture there was a floor sitting under here, you just slide that guy right on like that. The boot is then resting on the floor right beside the DryGuy, and you've got this clear path for all that nice warm air to get in there and dry out something that is otherwise going to be extremely hard to dry out. Now, I've just told you about how much I really like this thing, and you're probably wondering, well, all those things that you really like come with a price tag, because I've certainly told you guys things that I love before that cost an arm and a leg. That is not the case with this. I was so impressed with this. Now, DryGuy does have some other things. They've got warmers and dryers that have 4 different arms that you can put things on. They've got the attachment that you can put not on this, but on a larger version that will even go so far as to dry out waders if you're going fishing and things like that. So they've got a large catalog of things that you can choose from. But this guy right here, the DryGuy Force Dry, which will hold 1 pair of shoes, comes in at $50. To me, that is so well worth it, because think about how much money you're going to save on your gear not breaking down, on it not stinking ahead of time. Even if it's summer, yeah, you don't need your shoes necessarily dried out from water in summer unless you're doing some water crossings, but that's also when your shoes are going to really get kind of funky, and this will help with that, which will help everybody in your household. Now guys, before we get to our question of the day, once again, I want to ask you to please subscribe to our channel. Just click that little blue button right over there that says Gearist on it, and a little subscribe thing will pop up. Or you could go to the link down at the bottom there that tells you down in the description, tells you exactly where you can go to subscribe. And if you click those links down in the description, maybe you could even find a way to get your hands on the DryGuy Force Dry for even cheaper than its $50 manufacturer's suggested retail price. Also find us on all the socials just by searching for Gearist on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. And now, here is our question of the day for you, which is, do you have a drying method? Do you have something like a DryGuy or a boot dryer or a glove dryer or whatever? Or do you just shove some good old newspaper in there? Do you save those little silica packs from everything that you get under the sun? Do you shove those in there, which are an excellent thing as well? Let us know down in the comments section below. Guys, once again, thank you so much for spending just a few minutes of your time with us today. We really always appreciate it here at Gearist. Now get out there, get yourself dirty, and we will see you next time.